Okay, good evening. It's Wednesday the 18th, and our guest tonight, we hope, will be the Director of Public Works, Joe Lynch. He is probably the busiest man in town, and I think he's upstairs talking to the selectmen. But we expect him down here. Meanwhile, we'll try and review a couple of other budgets, including maybe marshaling some questions for Joe so that we can save some time for him when he gets here. So, on the agenda is budgets to be determined. I thought I might be able to get either retirement or the capital committee in. I wasn't able to do either one of those, so I'll fill that slot with our own warrant committee budget, which is basically paying Julia, who is unfortunately absent tonight. So it's paying her, and then there are some small supply line and meeting expenses. So here we are. So here's Schedule A. I think we're the smallest budget in town.
Is that it? That's it?
The smallest type in town.
9,000, is that 9,000?
Smallest type? Let me fix that.
Not yet.
We need a bigger screen. What can we do about this?
9564,
Paper
is that
wall
it?
white.
$9,564.
Did you hear what he
Did you
said?
hear that recommendation from one of your members?
What did he say?
Missed it.
Get a smart board.
We need a smart board.
Smart board.
But that would double the budget.
An upgraded smart.
No, really, it's just paper wall white. That's what he said. That's the key factor.
So, yeah,
Flat, no gloss, and it'll be good.
actually, the Conservation Commission and the Historical Commission do a lot of work for less money than we. Anyway, so there it is. It's examination of the general expenses. We have basically office supply. This was curious last year, and I was right here, so I'm not quite sure what happened. We hadn't budgeted for office supplies, but yet we spent some. And other than that, I know that I think the 333 is probably the combined cost of our membership in the Association of Town Finance Committees, our expenses to go to their annual meeting, and also probably in the 263 or in the I don't know which one, is the cost of the nameplates, which we have locked up in the closet tonight. I apologize to the viewing audience.
Actually, that's my fault because they're sitting in my bureau at home right now.
The keys.
The keys are.
Well,
Sorry.
So I
it's
suppose we should
okay.
identify ourselves before we say anything, right?
Okay, I'm Paul Pascarella. Where should I look?
Anyway,
Who's responsible?
Who's responsible for the
the
fact that we all have to say our
debacle?
names?
Yeah.
no, I think we can dispense with that. Anyway, tune in next time. Tune in tomorrow, and we'll have our nameplates and
Yeah.
evidence. Tomorrow night. So anyway, this is the extent of our budget, but we should officially review all budgets. So there it is. Any questions? Phil?
Exactly when was the cost of the printing of the warrant moved out of the warrant committee budget? And why?
And why? I don't know.
It was in there for decades.
Years, right?
Yeah. That was part of our budget.
Yeah, and for a while it was lumped in with town reports. And then it got moved out of town reports to the selectmen elections and registration.
Just curious, it doesn't matter.
Maybe
It's billed.
because of the associated postage costs, or, I really don't know. but that's a good question. Anything else? Nope.
I have a question.
Sure.
Whit Bissell, town meeting member and warrant committee member. I just forgot the question.
Aw.
All right.
I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay, wait.
Anytime. Anytime. Anyway,
Gets to know on the brain.
it's a problem. So.
Oh, I know, I just remembered it.
Sure.
Does Julia get any office space allotted to her in the town office building?
She has a key to this room and
That's
can use
it?
it anytime. She could use other space as available upstairs. She has access to copy machines if we want copies. But we have to think about that. But certainly we can do copies. She can use any of the machines upstairs. I don't know.
What about computers?
She was issued a laptop. Laptop comes with the job.
Will we be getting revised budgets as things become more solidified? Or
Oh, yeah, we're in a bit of a flux right now in terms of our goals.
Yeah.
For this year's budget, but, yeah, no, I'm gonna send out a slightly revised budget tonight or tomorrow to you. Would you like it in print? Is that what you're asking for?
I like that because I can write notes on it.
Okay, all right. I will bring you some in print tomorrow,
Thank you.
okay? Steve?
Do we know where we are on the 15 expenditures through half the year?
Yes, we've spent $185, as far as I know. We have not bought new nameplates, we have not done anything else, so I think we are well below. Now, do we need that that rubber stamp appropriation of $850? Probably not. We could recommend that we cut it. I'd be happy to do that. I think probably we could trim, I'd like to look historically, a couple of years back, but that we could trim $300 out of it without blinking an eye. Is that what you had in mind?
Well, plus if we appear we're gonna leave money behind this year, and there are miscellaneous expenses or office supplies that we need, we could get them this year, if there's some place to store them safely. And, then we would clearly not need as much next year, so we could build in safe, by advanced purchase of
Yeah.
dues or advanced purchase.
Yep. Yeah, no, we do not, I don't know, I mean, the meeting expenses, I think, was predicated on everybody going to the annual Association of Town Finance Committee get-together in October, because it is about $50 a head. And if 15 people go, well, then $750.
Right.
But if 4 people go, then it's only 200, so, which is what happened this year. So, it's tough. It's on a Saturday in the fall, when other things are happening, so.
I think the year before we had 5.
Yeah. So, probably based on experience, we could knock a significant portion of that out. I would think taking 300 out would be pretty safe.
Hold
Good.
it Back until,
If you paid
we
the
die needed.
council on, or whatever, the committee, the finance committee dues for next year, this year, then that would be off the table right away. You'd know you could
Right.
save that.
Right. Yeah, I've got to find out from somebody when that bill is due. To pay it.
So this is all predicated on the decision of the selectmen to not have an override this year, and have an override next year. So is the idea then to conserve as much as we can? Because I've seen budgets so far that are, that are wanting, to say the least. So,
That have needs. Certainly, they've expressed needs.
certainly,
Sure.
certainly. So is that, are we all, is everybody in agreement that, oh, well, we don't have any say now because the selectmen have
No, we
so
have a
voted.
voice. I'm
Yeah.
not sure we have a say, but we have a voice.
Yeah.
And earlier this year, you may have been absent for the discussion.
I might have been.
But earlier this year, I created several scenarios of what could be done if you spent a little bit of free cash on one-time items, a bit more, including things like stabilization fund, or 4 other scenarios that involve spending more and more free cash in order not to cut budgets, okay?
Yeah.
And one of the scenarios was,
Scenario E.
well, one of the scenarios was, you know, gee, we could do an override. Thank you. You know, one was with a suggested $4 million override. One was with a suggested $3 million override. And then 4 scenarios were without any override, and spending, and either deep cuts or spending more free cash, okay? And I know I've sent this to you, but you would probably like it in print. And the elected committees, the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, there you go. Anyway, we looked at this first, and
I didn't see this. This is,
Right.
yeah.
so we looked at these scenarios first, and without your help, there was a slim majority of us who thought that it would be better to try for an override. But failing that, scenario E on that list
Yeah.
is the one that we were looking for. And that required a $500,000 cut to the requested school budget.
And that was what was presented to us, the 500,000.
So the selectmen and the school committee also decided that this was the scenario that they could live with, okay? If you weren't gonna go for an override. Problem with the override is basically, we do have to have one this coming spring anyway for, the Pickens firefighter costs.
Yeah.
And you weren't here, he was a firefighter who got hit by a car while on the job.
Yeah.
And anyway, we have petitioned the legislature to set up a special override mechanism, so that each year we can draw up to $500,000 to cover his medical costs, which have been about $400,000 a year. Early on, we had bonded it, and it was getting to the point where the Department of Revenue said, no, this is silly. You have to figure out some other way to pay for this. So either you put it into an override and it becomes a permanent part of your budget, or you have a mechanism such as the one that was petitioned for and authorized. Of course, now it has to go to the voters of the town. But the nice thing about that is that it's not permanently in your budget, and you only use as much as you need each year. So there's an override coming this spring, small, and then because of, when Joe gets here and we can talk about this, the EPA mandates for stormwater management.
Yeah.
And his estimate on that is that beginning in fiscal year 17, as opposed to 16, that we're working on, those mandates will require that the town invest annually another $850,000 a year. And, you know, maybe that gets turned into an enterprise fund of some sort. Maybe not, but at least to get it going, it's gonna be, it's an override all by itself. So you have an override in this spring. You're gonna have to have an override next spring for stormwater anyway, and a pretty good one. So the question is, where do you have an operational override this year in the face of large amount of free cash, which, or next year, okay?
But they have already voted on a two-step program.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's
That's
trying to look
subject to
forward and
change.
say, okay, it's a 2-year plan. We'll, you know, maybe it's the heavy lifting later after we get a little cardio in this year. I don't know. But it's, anyway, so that's all fine and good. And now the problem is that, we got the perfect storm financially. We got we had the free cash. We decided, well, let's use some of that to postpone the override. And now we need the free cash for $1 million worth of ice and snow and ice.
Yeah.
That $1 million is conjecture right now. I don't know exactly how much, but it could be a lot.
It's gonna be more than that.
And it's disappointment because, you know, if it postpones doing other good things for the town. But we're not alone. Every town in Massachusetts is wrestling with this problem. But anyway, that's where we are. Darnell, you wanted to say?
Oh, I was saying that two-step program, I think could be subject to change if these numbers come out what they look like. And I think $1 million is a conservative estimate for what we're gonna end up paying for these couple of storms. And I think it's conservative because I think, what was it, 2 years ago was over 800,000. We didn't get hit nearly like this. We had like $800,000.
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Okay, 3 years ago it was like $800,000, and we didn't nearly get hit like we're getting hit right now. This back to back to back, and then we haven't even factored in cleanup after this stuff tried to go away. So, so we're just at the beginning of this.
Right, no, we have no idea.
And winter's got a couple more months left, like weeks, months, whatever you want to call it, left. And this doesn't seem like it's slowing down. So,
It could be ugly and expensive.
yeah, and so all these numbers are going to go away because anybody who has any of that free cash built into their budgets.
Yeah, it's a
I'm
problem.
afraid,
It's a
yeah.
problem. Now, I mean, it would be a scramble for sure, but we could volunteer to work on a contingent budget. We have the basics.
And another thing I would suggest that we start looking at, since we are going to have to pay some stuff back this year, probably start talking with the selectmen, to go around in the schools, ask them what's not spent from last year's one-time money, that, you know, that tractor or something that wasn't bought, or that whatever that wasn't, you know, spent on, that we might need to come
Yeah,
back.
I
That
don't know.
might be
That might
something-
be a little drastic right now. We
It
don't,
might be something to look at.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
we-
thi-
we're
the-
constantly passing the buck down the road. I think it's time people start to understand that at this point in time, things happen that we may need to go back and get this done. And passing the buck is no longer
when you say get this done, what do you mean?
I mean,
Get an
just
override done?
you know, take it more seriously than just passing it down the road. I mean,
Yeah,
we've been talking about this for like almost 3 years now. I mean,
Right.
it's tired of hearing, every year it's a new excuse. Every year it's like we're gonna do something else. And every year we're just passing the buck down the road. Guess what? At some point the bills come due. And I think we have to look at that.
And this might be the year.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
if we have to go and look at budgets this year, this current year
Yeah.
budget, 15, and find out if there's money in it that we can draw back to pay down on some of the snow and ice in anticipation on what's gonna happen next year, we start looking, ask the questions. I think we have to ask the questions.
Well,
Because-
absolutely, it's routine to, well, I don't know if it's routine, but I know that the administration is looking at accounts like group insurance. What is their record? Not, right in this year, is there some money in there that could be, that isn't being used, or is projected not to be used, and could therefore be
Excess in budgets.
appropriated, from the prior year, as it were, from this year,
And I'm saying,
to snow and ice.
yeah, because all it's gonna do is shorten
So,
up our
sure.
free cash numbers. Because like I said, we've been
Right.
going through this whole thing about looking at our free cash numbers over the following year. Well, some of that are a lot of turnbacks, so let's look for our turnbacks right now.
Yeah,
See what
well,
we get.
we looked at the turnbacks, and they were all over the place for a variety of reasons, from totally different departments, and so you can't really,
I know, right, I'm just saying, right now, you got people who aren't getting hired, put money in the budget for somebody to get hired, we know they're not gonna get hired by the end of the year. Let's look at, I'm saying look at it, I don't know if
Yep.
it's there, I don't know how much is there, but let's start looking at it and taking take a real look and see what's going on. Talk with our accountant and see what's going on, talk with some of our department heads and see what's going on. Because like I said, I think this year's snow and ice budget's gonna be a really big number, and,
now, were you here when the fire chief was here?
oh yeah,
Okay.
so.
So in addition to the snow and ice, the fire chief told us that he might need $100,000 of overtime money.
So, I mean,
And this kind of a storm event is going to,
disaster
I mean,
like that.
the DPW overtime, some of that may get augmented by the snow and ice budget. I think that can happen. Police overtime, they're probably working a bit more overtime, or a lot more overtime.
Yeah.
Right now, we'll probably
Probably, yeah.
find out.
Yeah.
So these are gonna be
No, because
immediate demands on top of the snow and ice
It's going to
budget.
be a multiplicity
well.
of expenses beyond just removing the snow
Yep.
and ice.
Yeah.
So, I
So,
mean,
Sure.
so we're looking at it, so I'm saying, these are things that we're gonna have to start thinking about and looking at, starting this year, and go forward.
Okay, I got Phil and then Betty.
I don't have my budget with me tonight, but $1 million is about what we have used of free cash under scenario E for the operational budgets, correct?
Correct.
I don't see at this point how that's ever gonna be tenable with all of this one-time expense.
Right.
I think we ought to look at the departments that are recipients of any of that free cash and ask them to provide us with information on what the effect is gonna be if they don't get it. And what we can then do is
So-
look at what's gonna happen in the event that that occurs and reevaluate whether, as quickly as we can, whether we ought to go back to the Board of Selectmen and say we need an override.
No, I think you're right. And I think it isn't gonna take too long to figure out that $1 million worth of cuts on top of the cuts already lined up from requests, not from
Yeah.
contractual basis, will be devastating. I mean, I think the $500,000 cut to the school budget is already problematic. And of this $1 million of budget support, that we put the free cash to, how do you apportion which budget it's going to, okay? It's general budget support is going to all of them. But, the school is the biggest one, so on that basis, 630,000 is, of the million is the school. But there's a large enough piece of it that's also going to the police and the fire, and everybody else, so, and DPW for that matter, so that it would be, you know, devastating for any of those budgets. Even, you know, Board of Health isn't gonna look real happy about losing $200, you know, if you did a strict apportionment. So I'm not sure that it's useful to try and sit, I mean, we can go to the school and say, okay, if you're losing another 630, what are you gonna do, right?
It's to help make the convincing argument, though.
Yeah.
It demonstrates the impact.
Right. Well, you know, you're right, Darnell. I mean, last spring I wrote in the warrant that we probably need 2.2 million. And this fall it looked that way too. And then we got a little bit sidetracked with a healthy amount of free cash. So it probably would be the responsible thing to go look for an override. But I don't know that anybody beyond this room will feel that way. So.
Well, they won't until we lay the cuts out in front of them.
I'm sure what they're what's gonna be missing.
It's good to know what the cuts are.
Okay, Betty?
So, I know that we've had extra crew coming in from out of state and National Guard to do road widening, snow removal, and hydrant location and digging out. Who pays that bill, and is that something that the town's responsible for, or where does that money for those services come from? That adds to whatever the bottom line is for snow removal.
I don't know.
It's not free.
I don't think
Has to
so.
be the state, right?
Well,
I
if
would
the
think it's
the state's
state,
gonna
yeah.
end up, well, we're gonna feel it when it comes cutting local aid, when it comes down to like, say, okay, what portion of local aid are we gonna
This
get?
is- you've got
And that's gonna
local aid.
shrink,
Right.
you know what I'm saying,
And
so,
the T's killing the state.
yeah, so I mean, and that's gonna be another issue,
Well, we might
coming, so.
have some idea of where the state's budget is in a few weeks, a couple of weeks. We might. It's a new administration, so we don't know exactly how they're going to play this game. So, and I think the school committee and the selectmen would probably be interested in knowing what the state is going to give us this year, and that might factor into their thoughts as to whether or not an override should happen this year or next, or be proposed. Steve? Oh, sorry, Paul. Paul, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Don't we already sort of have a mechanism for analyzing those cuts by looking at the 2% cuts that you ask for with the budgets? We can use that as a foundation for going forward.
Mhm.
For if we're gonna add that if you're gonna present the argument, these are the kind of cuts that we're facing, since the free cash $1 million is probably gonna have to go to snow removal, this is what it's gonna look like without an override. I mean, it probably won't be the full 2% as,
And some budgets refuse to do it.
and some budgets are, but anyway, it gives, I think since it was already built into everybody's budgets that they handed in, I think it would give us, that might be a mechanism for at least figuring out where you go with this.
Right. I mean, we do have about 600,000 in free cash, okay? And, you know, lots of people have lots of good ideas as to what to do with it, and you know, the capital committee has suggestions for spending. They will be presenting to the Board of Selectmen their recommendations next week, the 24th. It's a little bit late for us to figure on that. We might, in terms of our schedule, we are meeting with the library and the police department tomorrow. On Wednesday, in theory, we have our all-evening meeting wherein we tell each department head what we've been able to do for them or not. That, given this given the need to re-examine where we are, I think that's gonna have to be postponed. Because,
We missed 4 meetings.
We have to wait till there's a little more parking
well,
out
we've
there.
missed
We
4
have-
meetings. We have missed 4 meetings. We could do it, especially if we met Monday and Tuesday in a, you know, working sessions, you know, just to try and nail down the pieces.
We still won't-
But we can't go ahead with our original plan as if the snow and ice bill didn't exist. Because that would be irresponsible. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, we could allocate money, make some people happy, decide what capital projects we would like to recommend, and go from there. But we can't, if there's no override, every scrap of free cash that's left is going to get sucked up by the snow and ice budget. So the 600, we're probably going to get another $140,000 from a FEMA reimbursement from 2 years ago. I think I read, and I'm sorry Joe's not here, but I think I read in the paper that we've submitted to FEMA for our expenses for the blizzard, which might be $240,000 to $300,000, but we're not going to see that for 2 years. So that doesn't really help us right now. Steve?
I know that before the end of the year, the departments have the flexibility to move around 3% of their budget from one line item to another. Is there any flexibility to move that money from within a department budget to a different department budget, or does that have to go back before town meeting?
No, if there's, we did this last year, and actually for snow and ice. Group insurance had a surplus 300,000 in it, and we took that out and put it to the snow and ice line. So
That said, then I think that Darnell's idea of applying some fiscal constraints, now there's still 35% of this fiscal year
is left.
is left, and there's got to be some opportunity to, you know, sort of, and I know we don't have the ability to just, you know, impose that, but, you know, if someone's been going without a vacancy for a while, they may be able to go for, if we can establish some ground rules, if, you know, looking for each budget to try to save a percentage before the end of the year, that would all be money that would be available to sort of, you know, chew this down a little bit without being as dramatic as it might be, to spend all that on not frivolous stuff, but, you know, if they've gone without for a while, there may be some savings there that we can use to beat this down just a bit. And I think that's worth, you know, having this
absolutely.
committee put that message out there.
Yep. And I'm sure that's, you know, the difficulty is, right now, the big departments are spending the money
Mm-hmm.
on the current situation, fire and police and DPW. And that's, you're not gonna get big-time savings from
us.
from the town clerk's office. So, you listening to me, Susan? Anyway. So, yeah, no, point well taken though, Steve, absolutely.
Then the other point I want to make, I think it's inevitable that somebody's going to target this stabilization fund for this as a sort of historically unpredictable expense, and we should know what we want to say when that happens.
Well, I think last year, facing similar choices, we deviated from a previous formula for determining how much a regular contribution might be, and cut it down from about 280,000 to 200 even for the general stabilization fund. And similarly with the GASB stabilization fund, we cut that down from about half of that, 140, to 100 even.
I'm not saying that,
So-
I'm saying take some out with a plan to put it back. We're
Oh,
not gonna get
taking
another-
it out entirely
Oh, so
instead of
beyond
cutting
just-
down the
Beyond
contribution?
just putting in, okay.
You know,
Well, Ted?
sure, I got Paul and then I got Phil.
Well, right now,
And then Steve, you
Yeah.
can jump back in anytime.
well, right now, we're planning, I think in your version 8 budget worksheet, when you're talking about what kind of money we're gonna put in from one-time funds to
Right,
the
yeah, no,
stabilization.
we're using,
You know, we're already, even if we cutting, say we didn't put anything into those two, that's a fairly healthy chunk of change right there.
yeah, no, it
You know, we
is.
might not need to, I mean, but Steve, your idea isn't without merit.
It's not his
No,
idea.
I'm not saying that it has merit, I'm just saying that
Well,
it's,
how much are we talking
so
about
we
when you
don't
say
know
a good chunk of change?
The stabilization funds that I have proposed, the contributions this year that I have proposed in
Yeah.
in all the sheets right across
Yeah.
are 280,000 to the general stabilization fund and 142 to GASB stabilization fund. The last year, instead of doing that, which is a formula tied to revenue, we cut those down to 200 and 100,000. The ongoing contributions to stabilization funds help your credit rating greatly, because it can provide you with flexibility if you have a problem.
So we
Having reserves is a good idea in general.
So we would be
We're short
wiping
of
us
time.
out, we would be wiping everything out then.
Well, not everything, but we could cut down the contribution, or we could cut down, I mean, there's no sense in taking money out of the stabilization fund and simultaneously putting some in,
Right.
right? But one could propose not putting stuff in, but
Isn't reserve appropriation.
But
This
the-
is- this
for the
is where I'm
for
going with
the
all-
GASB thing,
This is where I'm going with all of this, all my questions, is the cost of postponing things.
Yeah.
Whether it's the schools, whether it's the parks, whether it's whatever, all the cuts that we've seen, all the proposals that have been a sacrifice, everything that I've seen come across the board have been a sacrifice and a cost, including 0.8 teachers, 0.8 of a teacher. Board of Health lady running around closing offices so she can make copies. Everything that I've seen so far has not been progressive. It has been at the cost of, it has been at the cost of, yeah, of keeping at a level service. We're not doing that.
nope.
Everything we've been doing has been, postponing reality, and that's my feeling. And so, and the worst of it is maintenance. It's always at the cost of maintenance, and you see it in the fire station, you see it in the school department, you see it right across the board. And all those things have a multiplying effect.
Mhm.
So when you talk about, the status quo, just leave it as it is, or cut back a little, or use stabilization funds and all. And what you're doing initially is you're not funding these departments to do the job. And that always bothers me when you do that. I know the reason for it, but I always am hesitant to do it because it's not realistic and it's not telling the town what its cost is, and therefore you're not going to raise the revenue for it. That's always been my feeling. You need to be realistic with the town.
I agree, that's what we're talking about. Lee Michael.
I agree strongly with Gene's comments, and not only do I think that that scenario is true, but it also puts the town at unnecessary risk.
Yeah.
Because if you do cut those budgets to that point, and you do spend your free cash, as I think is not the recommendation from the Department of Revenue, but if you spend your free cash on operating budget, you essentially put the town in a position where it's living paycheck to paycheck. You don't have that extra money to cover an unusual expense. You don't have flexibility. And if you don't have flexibility, I think it opens yourself up to that unnecessary risk. I think we need to strongly reconsider the message that we sent about the override and reiterate our position.
And especially, thank you for that, and especially, I have watched towns go through this maintenance, where every time you cut the budget, you ask them to cut the budget, reduce the budget, it's always at the cost of maintenance. And then then it gets into a capital, capital projects. And it is seldom to the benefit of the town, in my opinion, to let maintenance go into capital projects.
Jonathan?
Quick question, how much is in the stabilization fund? Not Gadsby, but the
General
general?
one.
I have to check, but I think on the order of about 3.5 million. And then we have another 700,000, I think, in the capital stabilization fund, which is basically there to subsidize or smooth out the cost of capital if you need it. And we didn't contribute to it last year, and we're not proposing a contribution to it this year, because in fact we're spending a little bit more on debt service than we thought was a good idea. I think in general the town doesn't spend enough on debt service and is tying our hands from borrowing more money for capital projects. So that, if you're doing proper override, you'd probably want to earmark some money for expanded debt capacity. Paul?
Then I think when we're going over the final budget, I think it would be wise, since the whole purpose to me of a stabilization fund is to stabilize your budget when you're in unforeseen circumstances, which to me this qualifies for. Is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
I don't know, everybody gets snow and ice.
Yeah, everybody gets
Not
snow,
like
but they don't-
this.
not like this.
No,
This
not
is
like
unusual.
this,
We
no.
basically got
No?
the equivalent of 2 winters' worth in 3.5 weeks. This is.
Except if you're not spending your 3% of free cash on operating items, you can work more easily with this kind of thing.
Sure, but
We've got a couple $100,000, dollars that.
But I think at least this year, I don't think we should contribute anything to the stabilization fund. And, can leave the Gadsby where it is, perhaps. And for the general stabilization, transfer all of that to snow and ice removal. Because this isn't a normal circumstance.
No,
This
it's
is-
unprecedented.
This is unprecedented, but they've been saying it over and over in Boston weather history, going back 130
That's right.
years. This is completely unprecedented. You've never gotten this much snow in such a short period of time.
Right.
So it's straining everybody's resources. So I think,
And we really
Con-
haven't even seen the damage that it's
and
done.
contrary to way a lot of people, contrary to way I think sometimes people look at the world isn't a spreadsheet.
It's not.
It just isn't. It just isn't. There are things that transcend spreadsheets, and this is certainly one of them. Sorry.
But anyway, no, it isn't. And if, I did feel last year that we kind of held that budget together with bubble gum and baling wire, but and this year is without an override it's more the same. It's
It's
and
worse.
it's
Yeah,
worse.
yeah.
Right.
Of course, it's
But-
what it is.
But having a 2-year plan and using some free cash, that was not a totally horrible idea. But but the linchpin was the free cash, and now we've got other uses for it, so. So what do you want me to tell people if I'm talking to them? Go ahead, Phil.
What flexibility do we have on capital? Is there any borrowing capacity if we were to recommend that they, this year, borrow for capital rather than use funds that we need?
Well, I think the capital committee has about $1 million plus in projects they want to bond. Does that answer your question?
So was their intention to bond it or to ask us for money?
To bond it, and then another chunk that they want us to pay for with free cash. Capital projects with free
And do
cash.
we know how much over and above what they want to bond that amount was?
460?
459.
So that's,
So that's gonna go away.
Oh,
yeah.
We
Do they
can't,
only have $1 million worth of bonding capacity?
apparently,
It couldn't go to $1.5 million?
million two. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I just think that I think we need to move along two different tracks. One is, let's prepare the pain so that we can reconsider an override this year. And the second is, what alternative do we, if there's not an override, what's the alternative to just cutting $1 million from all of the budgets, operating budgets? For example, part of that would be not to make a contribution this year to the reserve funds. Perhaps both of them. One would be to tell capital, don't ask for $400,000, bond it, either stay with your $1 million if that's all you have, or if you've got room, fold the 400 into the bonding and get it this year, at least 1 year, do it all with bonding. And
I
then
think-
if we didn't contribute to the reserve funds, we have made up almost half of the $1 million we've got to cut from the operating budgets that could be put back into those budgets to make them a little less onerous without an override. To me, that's two.
Right, in
two
other words,
scenarios of
not
what-
cutting as much.
Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, absolutely, that's what upstairs is looking at right now, all the different, you know, I mean, usually that's what we do, we look for money under every rock in the future budget, and now they're looking for it in the current budgets and the future budgets, and, okay, I've lost track. Jonathan and then Darnell?
Well, you don't have to look at under any rock to find $575,000 in unappropriated free cash, right? I'm looking at scenario E.
Oh, sure. The 575, and actually, it's actually a little bit more because some little changes, and I'll try and update this stuff. It's about 614, whatever, 621. That is unappropriated free cash.
Well,
That is a big down payment on the snow and ice bill, no question about it.
Right.
But it means that there's a lot of other things that that nobody's gonna get, okay?
I do understand that, and I'm not thinking of this situation from a financially responsible point of view.
Right.
Understanding that is our role and all, but if I'm sitting in a elected position, have made a decision not to go, have come up with a 2-year plan, I don't know how, if they see money sitting around, if they can figure out for themselves also that we don't have to contribute to stabilization funds, then in fact we can go into stabilization funds if necessary, and I think there is a good argument to be made that this is an unusual circumstance, that hitting it for, if we've got 600 here, if the number is 800, I understand that's the very preliminary estimate, very, very likely not right, but you got 600 here, another 200,000 by not, or even 400 by not hitting stabilization funds. I just don't see how we'll have enough to change minds. If the school committee and the selectmen have decided that they're committed to this 2-year plan, looking at these numbers, you can still make that 2-year plan work. I mean, I'm happy, and I think we should, we're obliged to, we should paint a realistic picture but I think they look at it from a different point of view than we do. I don't know how we change their minds, is my point.
No, and, you know, there's, and, you know, using mechanisms like that, you know, not funding stabilization funds and using all this free cash and stuff like that, yeah, you may take care of the snow and ice, using the 140 we're getting from the storms 2 years ago. Yeah. Doing some additional cutting from whatever budgets might stand it.
Yeah.
Might get through, but you will not,
It just
you
makes
won't
the-
get, the things we won't get will be the requests on, you know, for one-time stuff. The $60,000 of maintenance projects from
Consolidated
Bill Ritchie.
facilities, yeah.
From Consolidated
Yeah.
Facilities,
Or that,
Full-time teacher,
yeah, so a lot of that stuff's gonna shrink, sure.
yeah,
And we'll be in worse trouble next year.
and we will be.
Yeah, no question. I don't,
But that's, you know,
But
I'm not
second-
suggesting this is the way to go. I'm just trying to think of, if what we're trying to do is make the case, I'm trying to anticipate what the pushback will be. And if they are determined to avoid, as I gather they are, doing an override this year, it's easy enough to see how they can say, oh, well, here's how we do it.
no, it's probably doable, but it's at the further cost of.
Oh, next year will
Any
be a
capital
roadblock.
projects.
Yeah.
But also, bonding is just a delay of expenses. The bonding is pushing into the future what we realistically should be paying for now. So it depends, it's a philosophy, one I've never bought into. I understand bonding, but I don't understand bonding for everyday expenses. I don't understand bonding for
Oh, no, you
running
can't.
a
I
town.
mean, nobody would issue a bond on everyday expenses. They will issue bonds on road repairs,
Yeah.
because those are gonna generally last you 25 years.
Have you been waiting for me? For you?
Good to see you, Joe.
Selectmen's meeting.
Have a seat.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Pull right up.
Need a minute?
You,
I don't have a minute.
sorry, I don't have any coffee for you.
Okay.
So,
Good evening.
thanks for coming. I just wanna say quickly, I feel pretty lucky we have you as the director of the DPW in these trying times. And, good luck to you and your crew. We appreciate it.
I really, appreciate hearing that from folks like yourself, and I know you speak for yourself, but I think you maybe echo a lot of concerns from others. I just gave a quick synopsis upstairs. I mean, this really is an astronomical event. If you understood, we've had people in from Army National Guard, Air National Guard, New York Department of Transportation, Pennsylvania Transit Authority, Turnpike Authority, Maryland Department of Transportation, Bureau of Prisons. We have people, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in mutual aid assets being gifted to the community just by our involvement in that emergency declaration that was made. I get to drive the desk, I get to drive the car and cruise through the routes with Steve. I didn't even recognize Steve, but he knows I'm out there. He's seen me in his neighborhood. I get to assess it and think about it. My guys are out there in two different levels. I have guys getting overtime and killing themselves, but making some money. And I've got an assistant, operations director. Are we televised, or am I just?
Yeah.
No, we are.
Yeah.
All right, so I just want to get the thanks out to Brian Carlisle, my operations director. He's a salaried employee, just like myself, but, Brian is literally working $90 to $100 a week for the past month. Did I say dollars? Hours a week for the past month. And makes the same base salary that he makes in the middle of July. So, it's those types of efforts that are yeoman's work that really are trying. Hundreds of complaints and thousands of thank yous keep us going. And it's nice to see the good folks in this town appreciate stuff like that. On a summary note, because you guys are money folks, right now, to date, we're about $671,000 in snow operations. We've got a 3-inch storm tomorrow, 24-hour storm tomorrow. 3 inches is nothing. It's a dusting, in my opinion. We have a major storm Saturday, Sunday. I went to bed tossing and turning, flipping the weather coin, snow or rain, snow or rain. And believe it or not, more snow is better.
Snow is better.
Yes,
Rain is going to be devastating.
Yeah.
The flooding and the roof collapses and the secondary problems in individual homes, never mind the streets, is just going to be catastrophic. So we got a big event coming, and it's big. At this point, they're not saying it's going to miss. It's not a nor'easter. It's not going to pack itself up in the Gulf of Maine. This thing is sweeping across the country, and it's coming our way. And it's just a matter of where the temperature gradient goes with the jet stream. So we get some money to spend this weekend, too.
When is that coming?
Saturday, Sunday.
Saturday night starting?
Yeah. Saturday afternoon. Saturday afternoon. Fast mover, though. It's a 24-hour storm.
It's rain, right?
Right now, it's saying it's big, depending on the temperature. It could be rain, it could be snow, and, it's still too early to tell. I'll know more tomorrow night. I'll know for certain come Monday morning.
So to date, it's 671,000,
That's correct.
and,
That's to date. That's the entire season to date.
and
Okay.
how much of that the National Guard provided for us?
That is out of pocket. That is not counting any of the outside assets. Out of that, there was a federal declaration request made by Governor Baker for the Juno blizzard, which was the January 26, 27 snowstorm. That declaration allowed an eligibility of a 48-hour window. Our damage assessment report for that one was around $225,000 of eligible expenses. We spent a heck of a lot more over a wider window, but they
Yeah.
only give you that 48-hour window.
Yeah.
And if the president makes a declaration, typically will, we stand to recoup 75% of those costs. So if you let's say that they're going to disallow $25,000, $200,000 number, we're looking to recoup on an average about $150,000.
So 75% of the 245,000.
25.
Yeah, but I think when you look at the ultimate eligibility, things like police standby, fire standby, the things that you put in a damage assessment report are eligible for damage assessment, but they're not eligible for reimbursement.
I get it, yeah.
So it's going to be close to 200,000.
Okay.
Looks very similar to the Blizzard of 13 numbers. It fell on the weekend, just like this fell on a weekend. The numbers look really pretty similar. So we're looking at about 150,000 recovery. Just to underscore it, that Blizzard 213 reimbursement, we just got the check last week.
Just in
3
time.
years out.
2 years later. So as far as how that cash flow works on your free cash is a big issue.
Right, right. Well, it can't come too soon, but it's not going to arrive in time to
No.
change our conversation.
Right.
All right.
So I just want people to understand that the line item for snow and ice removal is 150 to start. So if we've spent 671, we're
Okay.
over by 421,000
Yes,
at the moment.
yes.
But winter's not over,
Right.
That's correct.
so. And I don't know, it used to be the calculation was something like $8,000 an inch in terms of municipal costs on a snowstorm. And
On a good-sized storm, I mean, the cost per inch on a smaller storm is greater.
Goes up.
Just economy of scale.
so I guess I could look at 671,000 and divide by 7 feet and figure it out, right?
No,
No?
no. Because at some point, it grows exponentially. Things
Right.
like spending $30,000 every single night in hauling snow, in the off
Right.
hours. We've got
Right.
trucks and loaders, things you don't do on a typical winter. Last year, we've only loaded snow out in 2013 and this year, in the 6 years I've been here. So it's a rare thing that you have to do it. We are doing it almost nonstop. At this point, there's just no place to put it in the safety of the, thank God it's school vacation week. It's giving us some time to regain some ground. But, the goal is to get those intersections safe and get those sidewalks plowed, come Monday.
Have those school roofs been shoveled?
School roofs,
Yeah.
Consolidated Facilities are working on, and the building department, building commissioner's office, are working on all of the school roofs, both evaluation and physical work. Joe Prondak was in that briefing upstairs with the selectmen, and, I guess their concern is more drifting snow. The accumulated uniform snow loads are not as much of a concern.
But if you have a big drift, could be a
Drifting
problem.
is what they're watching for,
Or a big rain.
or if that sponge becomes saturated. Right.
Brutal. Brutal. I love your Facebook page. I'd never been there before, before yesterday.
It's a double-edged sword.
Right.
It opens ourselves to a lot of criticism. I'm told that I'm not a social media kind of guy. I'm not ooey gooey. I'm kind of like nuts and bolts and drive on kind of guy. But I'm told that if you want to get the word out, you get it out through things like social media. And to get it out on social media, you've got to be somewhat current. So taking pictures and putting stuff out as I'm parked on the side of the road in snow, taking pictures and sending it.
It's great.
I don't know, we increased our Facebook population by 12% this week. It can't be a bad thing, I guess.
Right. It's because My Town Matters told us where to go, had a link right there.
Well, I hope it's informative. I try to keep some of it light.
It is. I don't know when you had the time to write your little commentary, but
It's a voice-to-speech recognition. I'm literally doing it while I'm driving. I take a picture and just
wow.
voice-to-speech recognition, and it's out there.
How's your equipment holding up? with all
Tough,
this? Yeah.
tough. I've professed it to this committee after having been professing it to the capital committee. I have my entire fleet on my capital plan. It's got useful life, it's got economic life built into it, and I try to forecast what the big horizon looks like. It's gloomy. Major events like this, when, just equipment can't run that long when it's, 20 years old, and we have a lot of breakdowns. But it's the fact of what we deal with, we just adjust to it. We've gotten through it before, we will again. Levels of service are impacted by equipment reliability. If you've got $1 million, I'll buy some trucks. I'm not asking. I've asked through the capital committee, and they know what my wishes are.
Right. Darnell?
Joe, if we don't get any more, just to understand, if we don't get any more snow, what is it gonna cost for us right now to get rid of what we got? What are the additional costs we're looking at getting rid of what we got?
You asked a fair question. 671 to date, that's what we've spent, what bills on prior storms we know are coming, what we've accounted for that in this past storm, and the removals that we've gone through. We still could easily have another $150,000, $200,000 in cleanup costs just of where we are right now moving forward with no more snow. No more snow.
Yeah, because we're trying to get an understanding of what we're actually looking at, right now. And, it's...
Donnell, I have 2 sidewalk tractors with snow blowers on them. Both of them broke down during this storm.
No.
Both of them, and I mean, to the point that with emergency declaration, I know I could go out and I could have bought off the shelf with a state contract a $150,000 piece of machinery. I mean, obviously didn't do that. In good consciousness, how could I? But that's the types of decisions we're
That's the
facing.
sidewalk snow blower thing?
Sidewalk snow blowers,
4 foot or whatever, 3 foot thin?
5 foot wide.
Yeah.
How old is
You
that?
gotta fix that, Joe.
Oh,
No, Joe.
we got it.
We gotta fix
We've
that.
got 2 and both of them are broken down.
That
One of them, we
thing
got the tracks delivered today and the windshield is on its way.
No, we gotta fix that because I tell you, that thing made life in my neighborhood so much more bearable after these last couple of storms. Because you can see the track going down Blue Hill Terrace and you can see the track going down the Parkway where literally people had no place to put the snow and they can't throw it any higher than they have.
And
I
that's,
mean,
that's
really
a
need
critical
those
piece of
things.
equipment for
It
widening
is.
roads.
It's-
Not just sidewalks, when you're not doing sidewalks, you could also use it for running
For edging
gutters
the
and
road,
widening,
I'm
widening
saying,
roads.
even just for getting the kids back and forth from school and not having to walk up the street there,
They're not on the list.
it's just, no, we need those. Is the state got any of those around that maybe we can have come through, but, I
Well,
mean,
actually, DCR, who plows Blue Hill Parkway and some of the neighborhoods around Route 138 and the Pawtucket School, actually, theirs broke down and they borrowed ours a couple weeks ago.
yeah, but no, I'm saying, I saw that machine in function, I was like saying, I gotta tell Joe that this thing works. I love that machine, but I'm just saying, it's like, definitely we need to,
Yeah, so one of them is,
Go to
one of
bed,
them's
get
an
that
easy
working.
repair, that one's in the midst of being made right now, we got the parts delivered yesterday. The other one is got an electrical problem in it, and it's only 2 years old, well, 3 years old now. And that one, we're working on warranty, trying to, but it doesn't get us up any faster.
yeah, but no, because I was like, we need more of those.
So, Ted and I, first of all, I submitted my budget. Ted and I sat down a month ago, and we kind of hashed through some things. And then the snow started, and we exchanged some emails and exchanged some documents back and forth. I can sit here this evening and say, out of the 6 years, 6 budgets I've submitted, this was probably the one that I haven't had the opportunity to review that final iteration on, and that's what, Ted and I worked on, and he just got back to me end of last week.
Sunday.
Seemed like a month ago. Seemed like a while ago, but I haven't had a chance to boil it down, so I am gonna speak in general terms and not be able to be very specific without having to get back to you. And I think this is your last meeting prior to,
Well, we were just discussing earlier that because of the uncertainty of snow and ice costs, it may change our approach to all budgets, and that may lead to a postponement of the all-evening meeting. We've also missed 4 warrant committee meetings along the way, too, so we're a
Because
little
of weather.
behind. Yeah.
because of, so,
Yeah, well, no, I had a party I had to go to.
pretty selfish. I think those people listening at home.
But yeah, no, we've missed 4. Town hall being closed and et cetera. So we're a little behind the 8 ball too.